Bible Worm, reading the Bible with Bible Worm.
Welcome to Bible Worm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, Professor of Religious Studies at Hendrix College and Theologian in Residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas.
And I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning and Music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish and one Christian.
This week, we continue with our summer series, Disputing with God, with Psalm 88, the Bible's most unrelenting lament psalm. The speaker cries out to God from the depths of the pit, lamenting about the pain, suffering, and isolation that makes their life seem like a walking death, even accusing God of being the one who has caused them to suffer. And yet, in this dispute, there is no response from God. Night and day, the speaker cries out from morning until night, every day since their youth, and God simply does not engage. We think of all the ways this psalm can speak to the pain of our own lives, giving voice to that which we might fear to voice before God, and we wrestle with what it means to dispute with a silent God, who is simply nowhere to be found. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Bobby, how are ya?
Hey, Amy, I'm good.
I should say, hey, Summer Bobby.
Summer Bobby. Yeah, I love this guy. He's the best of the Bobbies.
He is a super fun Bobby. Yeah, I don't have any interesting stories for you. Do you have an interesting story? Or
Summer Bobby is less interesting than,
He's lighthearted.
He's lighthearted. He's less stressed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nothing's really happening in his life. One of my flowers escaped from the flower bed yesterday. We can't quite figure out. Like, we came home and then one of our plants was just sitting on the sidewalk. And so we stuck him back in the flower bed.
That's
but I can't
really
figure out.
Weird.
Yeah, like I don't even have a scenario in which
that
makes any sense, unless either plants are gaining the capacity to move around, which would be disturbing, or like a dog dug it up, or like a person took it out of our flower bed and put it on the sidewalk. I don't know. There's no scenario that makes any sense.
You know, Michael Pollan just put out a book about sort of like plants maybe having more sensory capacity and awareness than we had realized. I don't think he gets all the way to a plant might jump out of the ground and move to
maybe
the sidewalk. Maybe you could write that book, the next part of that.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do if, like, you and I both have made changes in our dietary habits in recent years based on the cognitive awareness of animals. And if we decide that plants also are like, don't kill me, then I don't know what's going to...
We're going to be very slender people.
We're going to be very slender people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
But that is a problem
that is a problem for another day. The problem, or rather invitation for today, for this moment, is the next in our series focused on disputing with God. That feels quite different from the other texts that we have looked at so far this summer.
We are making a move today, yes.
Our text today is Psalm 88. I was just listening to a lecture that Rabbi Shai Held did on this psalm, and he refers to it as the unrelenting in its bleakness. The bleakest of the Psalms.
I think that is a fair and accurate assessment of this psalm. It is sort of the low point.
It's a low point
of the lament psalms.
You know, each of us, though we agree in the end on which texts to use in a summer series like this, each of us have texts that we bring that feel particularly, have a heat about them related to our topic. And this is one of the texts that you wanted us to look at. And I wonder if you want to say anything up front about how this fits into your sense of arguing with God.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because, you and I and Terry, our liturgist, all kind of talked about the texts and weighed in on them. And this was sort of the one that you and Terry were both like, And I was like, no, we must do Psalm 88.
Yeah.
And so, I think that this is probably a little bit of an uncomfortable text. I don't know. Does this text have a life in the Jewish tradition? Like, do you read it in services?
It does not have much of a life. No, I think there are a lot of people in the Jewish world who are not overly aware of this psalm.
That is definitely true in the world that I move in anyway. And, this is a lament psalm, and lament psalms are by their nature disputatious. And so it fits into our theme in that way, where there's a covenanted relationship between God and Israel, God and humankind, or God and an individual person. And the lament psalms as a genre are people saying, hey, God, life is not working out the way that it should, given this covenant that we have. Can't you do something about it? Most often, lament psalms then make a turn toward the end, where the person says, I know you're going to take care of this, God, and I'm already prepared to give you thanks.
Yes.
And this psalm, I think maybe uniquely, or maybe one of two psalms in the entire Psalter, never makes that turn.
Yes.
It is just an unrelenting complaint. Almost, it is an accusation that God is not living up to God's promises in any discernible way. And so, to me, this is like the ultimate sort of disputation, that just a human voice saying, God, you are not Godding very well. And my community is deeply uncomfortable with that sort of address to God. And maybe we should be. But, we tend to say things like, thy will be done. We don't feel like we have the authority or the right or whatever just to speak our truth to God. But my sense is that the kind of things this psalmist says are things that often are the human experience.
Yeah.
And the absence of a God speaking back is often the human experience.
Yes.
And so I think this psalm gives us something that is true, even as it is maybe uncomfortable for us.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to bring it. It's a one-sided dispute in which God is completely silent.
I think that is one of the most interesting things about the Psalms is like you're kind of, you're like reading someone's journal, or you're like inside someone's prayer, and you only hear their voice.
Yeah.
And so to put that in the context of a series on disputes, I think is really important and really profound. And I'm really curious to see how our conversation will go.
Me too. You and I often, when we start into a text, we don't really know where it's going to go, which is one of the things I love about our process, is that we don't have a pre-scripted direction. Yeah. But often I can kind of guess sort of where you're going to go and where we're going to end up. But with this text, I have zero idea. So I'm kind of excited.
I
about it.
I feel the same way. Don't be scared. No. Yeah. So along those lines of sort of total surrender to the psalm and sort of see what happens, I want to divide the reading today following this word Selah, which occurs twice in the psalm. It is not where I would have divided it in terms of like intellectually, I'm thinking here's a good break and here's a good break. It's not. And it's not a good break in terms of the number of verses. It's not evenly divided. It's not any of those things.
That's so interesting, because as I was preparing, I was thinking those selahs are in weird places in this psalm.
They are.
Yeah.
And we're going to lean into the weird.
Good.
And
let's do.
Just to like warn you, I guess, Selah, it indicates some kind of gap, and maybe it means sort of like strike up the band, like there's some kind of musical interlude that would happen there. I mean, these psalms are songs.
Yes.
So as we reach the Selah, I'm gonna like hum a little thing just to like give us a pause, give us a sense of like we're inside of a song, and then we'll get back into our intellectual lives and
that's so
see what
beautiful,
happens
Amy.
next.
My sense of the word Selah is just my teacher, Walter Brueggemann, would just joke that was where the band leader broke a string on this instrument, and that was like the curse word, like, oh, Selah. And then we'd have to pause and like restring. And so it's always a little bit of a like joke to me when the Selah shows up.
That's really funny.
And so I appreciate your taking it seriously and grounding it spiritually,
Well,
as is so often your gift
we'll see.
to me and to the world.
It is a funny break intellectually, so we'll see how it fits with our reading. All right, then. I am looking at the NJPS, starting at the beginning of Psalm 88.
By the way, this is one of those texts where Hebrew, text based on the Hebrew, read
yes, the verses are different.
I would call the superscription to the psalm as the first verse. And so we're going to be reading off verses. And so just depends on what translation people are
Make sure that
reading.
we understand what we're talking about here. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. A song, a psalm of the Korahites, for the leader Al-Machalat La'anot, a maskil of Haman the Ezrahite. O Eternal One, God of my deliverance, when I cry out in the night before you, let my prayer reach you, incline your ear to my cry. For I am sated with misfortune, I am at the brink of Sheol. I am numbered with those who go down to the pit. I am like someone helpless, abandoned among the dead, like bodies lying in the grave, of whom you are mindful no more, and who are cut off from your care. You have put me at the bottom of the pit, in the darkest places, in the depths. Your fury lies heavy upon me. You afflict me with all your breakers. Selah. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. You know, I told you I just came from listening to this lecture that Rabbi Shai Held gave, and I want to ask you first one of his questions that's really sort of under my skin, and it doesn't fit well with the translation I just read to you from. But in this section that says, when I cry out in the night before you, let my prayer reach you, incline your ear to my cry. It sounds like this is something that's happening now. Like I am crying out to you, or let this all happen now. He reads this as something that is sort of like when I have cried out to you in the night. Like this is all something in the past, sort of saying like, I have cried out to you and it hasn't worked.
Yes.
And I feel like those are really different readings. And I wonder how do you read it, or how does that matter to you?
Yeah, that's such a good question, Amy. And, my reading of it is that this speaker has been crying out and that it has not resulted in anything.
Yeah.
And so there is certainly a past tenseness to it. I'm looking a little bit I'm reading in the NRSV today, in verse 9, every day I call on you, or day by day I call on you. There's this sense of the passage of time in this psalm as a whole. I have been doing this. I've been doing it. I've been doing it in the morning, in the evening, in the afternoon. I cry out. That said, in this particular verse, let my prayer come before you, I read that in the now. And so it is not that I have been doing this in the past and I'm not doing it now. It's, God, I am speaking to you, yet here still again once more. And my cry has not made it through, but now let my prayer come before you. And so it is this sort of persistent cry that has been going on for some unknown amount of time. and here we're doing it again.
Mm.
That's sort of how I am putting that together.
It's so interesting. Yeah, this sense that like, it is sort of new and now, and also because it sort of folds into this pattern that has been going on for so long that it doesn't feel very hopeful. It sort of is like, it is like this very sort of exhausted, like, listen to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that way of saying it is exactly right. The reference here is Lord God of my salvation is the address. So this speaker is still able to address God by name and refer to God as a saving God. And there is some level of trust and hope and possibility. But I think the way you're reading it is similar to the way I'm reading it. And it's really important that this is kind of exhausted. And we've been doing this day after day after day, and we have gotten nowhere. And so here we go again. And the expectation is probably not that suddenly this time's going to be different, but maybe this time is going to continue just to be the same. But the speaker has not given up in some kind of elemental way that this is at least who God should be, and who God has been, and maybe who God still could be.
Yeah. You know, I'm wondering, as you're talking, I will say the first verse, depending again on what translation you're looking at, this sort of superscription that says, you know, a psalm of the Korahites. I have heard that the Korahites had a role in the temple life that was singing, but was known for very loud singing. Like that, would be sort of like a shouted kind of song, like that there's an urgency about it. And so I'm sitting sort of with that, wondering, and also this, I think nobody really knows with this machalat la'anot, that is in my translation just written out in letters. Like, we don't really know what that means. Too. I don't think anyone quite knows what that means. I mean, unless you know what that means. Do you have any?
I do not know what that means.
So one possibility, we'll see sort of later on in here, this root ayin nun, sort of in the world of like affliction, suffering. Yeah. Maybe there's like sickness in here. And so another question that I have that the psalm is not going to answer for us is, can we derive anything about what scenario this person is in that calls them to be crying out in such a way?
I like that. I mean, there's so much that you just put on the table that I really love. One is about I did not know that about the Korahites and the sort of loud singing. And I kind of like that as that this is sort of a raging psalm and not like a quietly resolved psalm, or I like that sort of, you know, the way I'm processing that is like a shouting in the darkness kind of idea, but not a quiet submission, but a rage about it. In terms of the life setting, in my reading, you do not know what is happening to this speaker. There's a lot of references to being close to death and being afflicted and those sorts of things, which some readers have taken to mean that this is about illness and maybe somebody is in the last days of their life and they're praying for healing. I think that is a fine reading, but I would not want that to limit what this psalm can do. Yeah. I feel like this sort of dark night of the soul, I feel like I'm about to die. I might as well be dead. Like I feel like this could apply in all sorts of scenarios.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. And I think that is really a big part of the spiritual power of the Psalms, is that even though sometimes the superscriptions try to give you a scenario, they're like a little weird, that they don't tell you exactly what it is. And so people can hold a psalm like this can hold a lot of life experiences.
Yes.
Yeah. So then it goes on, and I'm so interested in the vocabulary that it chooses to describe the kind of suffering that's happening. My translation has in my verse 4, I think it's your verse 3, for I am sated with misfortune. Yeah. Sav'a, like, I think of that verb as like being hungry or full. Are you hungry or full?
Yes.
And this person is full. The full is supposed to be good. I am satisfied. My needs are met. in terms of misfortune.
I love that, Amy. Yeah, because you expect normally when you hear sated with good things, and that's kind of how this verb gets used often in the Hebrew scripture. And then here I'm sated with trouble. So there's an irony there. This thing that should be good, like God has promised that you will be sated, with milk and honey, and instead I am sated with trouble.
Yeah.
And so there's a kind of an ironic reversal there of sorts.
Yeah. And then we get into a lot of death language that starts with this reference to Sheol. What would you want to tell us about Sheol, or sort of what would you want to tell us about Sheol?
So the word there in my verse 3 and then in verse 4, Sheol in the one case and the pit in the other. To me, so I'm reading the NRSV today, and the reason that I'm reading the NRSV, even though I often read the Common English Bible, is because the CEB has chosen hell instead of Sheol. And I feel like that is deeply unfortunate.
That's different.
Hell in the sort of Christian context, or maybe post-Christian context, has the sense of like a place where you are like fully alive in torment after death. And so it's a place of like reproof and purification maybe, or punishment. Sheol doesn't have those connotations in my understanding. It is a little more like the Hades of the Greek world, maybe, where it's an extrapolation of the idea that you are buried in a grave, like in a hole in the ground, but you don't exactly cease to exist. You just kind of continue in this shadowy, partial, underworldly existence that's neither. It's not life after death, but it's also not annihilation. Yeah. It's just stasis. Yeah. And that's how I am reading this. And that this person feels like that's where they are experiencing that in some way, not actual death or actual Sheol, I think. Yeah. But their life is very close. Like it might as well be that they are living life in the pit.
I love that it's sort of this like shadowy, like it's sort of like life, but it's not, in some important ways it is not life. And so one way that I think, tell me if you understand this differently, but my understanding of Sheol is when you're in Sheol, you're kind of like you're not in relationship to God when you're in Sheol. Like God doesn't reach down into Sheol and have a relationship with people in that world. It's not hell, as you're saying, and there's no it's not a punishment. It's not like you have sinned and that's but it is there's a real sense of like being cut off from the life force. And that's a profound image to be like, feel sort of like the Walking Dead. Like you are here on earth, except you don't feel connected to things that give us life.
I really love that, Amy. I was thinking about the sort of, I'm going to use the word mundane, although I'm not sure that's the right word, but that the things that give me joy in my life are absent. And so therefore I feel like I don't have relationships or I don't have things that give me joy. And so I feel like I might as well be dead. I had not connected that to the absence of God also feeling like maybe I'm in the pit. And I think that adds an extra layer for me that I really appreciate, is that the very inability to contact God makes it feel even more like this is Sheol, where you're right. I mean, we do have biblical texts where God does reach into Sheol, but it seems to be notable because that's not the way that
it's
that
the
normally
exception
would
that
work.
sort of proves the rule. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that God's action here is amplifying that sense that we're that the speaker is in the pit.
And then I love that sort of like the sort of, I don't know, almost like shell imagery. Like you look like you're alive, but you're not quite, or there's some kind of hollowing out of things. In the next verse that starts with going down to the pit, my translation is, I am like someone helpless. But the Hebrew is actually, well, what's your translation there?
The NRSV is verse 4. I am counted among those who go down to the pit.
Yeah.
I am like those who have no help.
Yeah. And the Hebrew is kegever in eyal. So it's like a gever is like a strong guy, like a person of vigor.
Yeah.
And so to use that word in particular and not just say like I am like a person who doesn't have help, but to say like I'm like a strong guy, but I have a vigorous person that has no vigor. Like I really have,
Yeah.
I'm a shell.
Yeah.
And then it gives us one more verse that I feel sort of tied into this general flow. Your verse 5 in the NRSV, my verse 6 in the Hebrew. My translation says abandoned among the dead. What does your verse say? What is your translation?
Forsaken among the dead.
Forsaken. Yeah, the Hebrew is chofshi, which is usually in my mind means sort of like free. Like it should be, no, maybe not should be. It's sort of like when an employer says like, I'm going to let you go, like you're free.
Oh yeah.
Like you are cut, like
Yeah.
it's again, using this language that like being satisfied, like
Yeah.
it seems like it should be good, but it actually is terribly bad.
I love that. I am sated with trouble and I am set free among the corpses.
I'm set free among the corpses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The ones in the grave that you don't remember anymore. Like, again, going back to that idea that God doesn't necessarily have a relationship with people who are in this worldview, with people who are dead, people who are in Sheol.
I am so interested. I had not really noticed this in my own reading. And so I'm so glad that you're kind of helping me see it. That, I mean, I just said this before, but it's not just that this person feels like they are among the dead, but God is treating them as though they are dead and like not remembering, not connecting, not letting their prayers come. And so it's not just like I feel this way, but also God's response. Like I might as well be, given all that God is not doing.
Yeah.
That God sort of has said
God will do. Yeah, it makes it so much more pointed to read that initial cry, let my prayer reach you. Like, how can my prayer even reach you from this from this proverbial underworld that I feel like I'm inhabiting?
I like that verse too in my translation, that let my prayer come before you. Because like, there's a sense in the biblical cosmology, I guess, that God is above and beyond. And so it would be possible that God is so far above us that God can't see us and that God prayers can't make their way to God. And so God has to kind of bend and be attentive and pay attention. And we see this in the biblical text from time to time, that God, for whatever reason, doesn't do that, is thinking about other stuff or just like being high and lofty and not paying attention.
Yeah.
And so when God does that, there's just some kind of barrier. And it's not that my prayer is not enough, right? My prayer is doing what my prayer is supposed to do. Right. It's that God is not properly paying attention. God is not inclining toward me.
Yes.
And that's the issue.
And okay, so great. You've led us perfectly into these last two verses before that first Selah. You have put me at the bottom of the pit in this deepest darkness. Like this, it's not just that you're ignoring me and I'm in this terrible situation. You did this to me.
Yeah.
Shai Held calls this an active omnipotence, like a sense that like if there's a thing happening, God did it.
That's interesting to think about, whether like, so anything that happens to me is God has done, or whether the speaker is thinking about, in this particular case, you have done. Like, I don't know quite how to think about that, but even whichever way you've kind of frame it, like the fact that not only that the speaker thinks God has done something, like it is God's fault that they're in the pit.
Yeah.
And that they are able to say that to God, right? Hey, God, you did this to me. Like that is kind of shocking.
It is shocking.
Like, even if I feel that way, I would never say that.
And we've been talking through all these episodes about like, yes, dispute, and also dispute in the context of relationship. Like how does one character or the other in the story keep getting pulled back into relationship, and one or the other keeps trying to pull out of it and be like, I just can't even deal with you, and the other one says like, no, you are in this relationship and we're just gonna have to fight if we're gonna fight, but we're gonna be in this relationship together. And that is the place in this psalm where I feel like it's not just the speaker feeling cut off, but like really a strong pull in. Like you can't actually look away from this. You are responsible for this.
Yes.
Do you think that way of thinking about this kind of suffering makes salvation feel more or less possible? To think that God is the one who put you in the pit?
I need you to sing a little bit.
Sing me a sad song.
Sing me a sad song, Amy. I mean, I think the way that I am processing that is that the covenantal relationship that has been established between God and Israel, and therefore between God and this particular individual person, suggests that God should be exactly in the position of pulling people out of pits or freeing people from Egypt or doing all of these sorts of things that salvation entails. And therefore it's hopeful in that sense that like this is who God is, this is what God has said God will do, this is what we expect God to be, and so that God could at any moment change God's action and set things right. But at the same time, it is deeply disappointing then that God is the one who, for whatever reason, seems to have initiated this situation. And so if God is inclined in that way, like what hope do you have? Yeah. It's better if God is not involved at all, because maybe I can pull myself up. But when God is involved against me, the only hope I have is for God to change God's mind or to pay attention. And I guess that's why we're calling out so much. Right. How do you think about that?
That's a hard step for me. Like I can understand intellectually the idea that it would be a comfort to think God put you in the pit, because then it's like, okay, at least God's in control. And if I can sort things out with God, then maybe it'll be okay. But in this psalm in particular, there's no like, I deserve some punishment, but this is too much.
Yeah.
There's no, at least so far, we'll see what comes. There's no sense of like, I trust you to save me. You've always saved me before. Please do it again. There's a real rupture. And so, like theologically, philosophically, intellectually, that does not feel like a hopeful way of interpreting the situation to me. That doesn't bring me comfort.
That point that you made along the way there is so important, that this speaker is not saying at all that they have done something that deserves them to have been put in the pit.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know what God thinks, of course, but this speaker seems to think like this is just something God has done to me. And it reminds you of Job a little bit in that way, that there's no reason. It's not that God is over punishing. It's that God is just arbitrarily.
It's just happened.
Yeah. The only hope that's here is that first two verses where the reference is to God of my salvation and incline your ear. That does suggest that there is at least some thought that maybe God could do something. But you are right, like that is such a distant hope in this psalm.
Yeah.
And only there, as far as I can tell.
Well, I'm sure it gets better from here.
Hi everyone, it's Bobby here from Bible Worm. We hope you're enjoying the podcast. Amy and I started Bible Worm a couple of years ago because we wanted to create a space where we could talk deeply about the Bible in ways that bring together our academic backgrounds in biblical studies and our deep engagement with communities and people of faith. We decided to make this resource free because we want everyone to have access to sound biblical scholarship that connects biblical faith to everyday life. We hope you're finding the podcast fits that need. That said, while the podcast is free, making it is not. Amy and I and the rest of Team Bible Worm spend a lot of time and energy studying, recording, and editing the podcast to make it freely available to the public. If you enjoyed the podcast, and if you find yourself in a position to support our work, we hope that you will consider becoming a Bible Worm supporter for as little as $4 per month. For a bit more, you can also get early access to episodes, weekly liturgies, video Bible studies, join a monthly discussion group, and more. We realize not everyone is in a position to support the podcast, but if you appreciate our work and want to support us, we hope you'll check out our Patreon at patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for more details. Thanks so much for listening, and now back to this week's podcast.
Okay, I'm picking up in verse 9 in the Hebrew, verse 8 in the NRSV. You make my companions shun me. You make me abhorrent to them. I am shut in and do not go out. My eyes pine away from affliction. I call to you, O Eternal One, each day. I stretch out my hands to you. Do you work wonders for the dead? Do the shades rise to praise you? Selah. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. It's really hard to go back and forth between the discussion and the singing for me. I don't know if you're having that experience listening.
I'm having that experience too, yeah.
I just want to stay in that other I want to stay in that other realm. It's an interesting thing to think about with Psalms.
It is true that trying to parse and, like process intellectually this like deep experience of pain, it makes sense in one way, but the chanting that just gives expression to it seems much more real in this case.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a short section between these two selahs. This verse, the first verse I read, 9 or 8, depending on your translation, you make my companions shun me. You make me abhorrent to them. I'm shut in and do not go out. The NIV has something like, you have taken my closest friends from me.
Mm.
And that hits me harder, the sense of, like if we saw before, it was much more like a sense of you've been abandoned by God. You're like, there's like a sense of loneliness for God or loneliness for like life in general. And now we get, maybe we should have imagined if this person felt they were near death, if they weren't really part of a community, but now we know for sure they are not part of a community.
Yeah, this is, the way the NRSV has it is, you have caused my companions to shun me, which I like because it is that the companions have also made a decision, which is to shun. And so my friends, my companions have not been faithful to me. They have pushed me away. And then the cause of that then is because God has led them to that. And so it's sort of this dual responsibility kind of idea. So I think the difference for that with me is to say you've taken my friends away sort of absolves the friends a little bit.
It does.
You could imagine the friends being like, no, we want to be with you. And God's like, Furf.
Yeah.
But here it's God saying, nope, you're going to shun them. And then they do it.
Yeah.
And so that to me, that amplifies that.
I think it does amplify
bit.
the sense of like abandonment or loneliness. This second line, you make me abhorrent to them. Toeva is like a, it's like a word of disgust. Yeah. Like you make me disgusting to them.
Yeah.
And again, I know that we are not trying to put this in the context of a particular life experience, but there, you could think about it in a lot of different ways. You could think about physical illness. That is, bodies are sometimes disgusting, Bobby. They do disgusting things.
They do.
And when your body is doing something you don't want it to do, people might distance themselves from you.
Absolutely, they might.
And then there's a sense of shame about it and a sense of aloneness. And but I don't think it has to be limited to that kind of physical.
No, I don't think so. Like I had a period in my life where I was struggling a lot with depression, and I don't think that my friends actually thought I was disgusting, but I surely thought that they did. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like just that way of processing it. So I think this could refer to physical illness. I think it could refer to mental illness. I think it could refer to all sorts of different things where we feel
experiences.
isolated.
Anything that would maybe bring a sense of like shame. You lost your job, your marriage fell
absolutely.
apart, whatever you think your life ought to look like, that society also seems to think your life ought to look like, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And people will distance from you because people are people, I guess. But
Amy, in my PhD work, I worked on this idea of mimetic death that I got from Robert Lifton, who's a psychologist. And, mimetic death is basically the experience that your life is death-like. And the psalmist has pretty much said that that's what their life is like, but they do a really amazing job in this because, the sense that we're in a pit and we are distanced and we have lost all relationships. And this line, I cannot escape, like that feels like you're in a coffin. Like just the whole thing about how they are describing their life as feeling like they're dead.
yeah.
And that idea, like what Lifton's working on, is that this is a thing that happens to people, that death kind of breaches the boundary into life and starts to make people feel the experiences of isolation and even just like stasis. I can't get ahead, so I'm just stuck where I am. That feels like death, perhaps. And so this psalm is doing a really beautiful job of capturing that aspect of human life that is just a thing that people experience, and putting it in these very compelling terms.
Yeah. You're exactly right. I think that's a great mimetic death. That's what you said?
Mimetic death.
That's really a helpful sort of framework, because I think you're exactly right. I've been thinking about sort of where the selahs go in this psalm. We both noticed like that's not where I would have stopped my reading. I wonder what you make of this little chunk being a chunk. Like there's a shift to talking about the people around you and how the people around you have shunned you, and sort of and the sense of disgust that you sense from them. There's a repeat of sort of like calling out to God. And then there's this question: do you work wonders for the dead? Do the shades rise to praise you? Why do those things go together, Bobby?
I'm really loving this reading by the Selahs, even as it's driving me a little crazy.
It's driving me a little crazy too, yeah.
Because I want to think in terms of like rhetorical structure, and that the big but in 13 is like crying out to be a shift in the psalm. And verse 11 really wants to go with verse 10 in my reading. And so the Selah coming right there is disrupting me. And I think that fits really nicely actually with the psalm, where what the psalm is talking about is being disrupted. And so this kind of like this interruption feels like makes the psalm feel to me in an important way. I love that question about why does the Selah break after those questions? And like, to me, those sort of like, do you work wonders for the dead? Do the shades rise up to praise you? Like, if ever you need to pause and sing a song, like that's the kind of place. This person is thinking of themselves, like the shades are just the like shadowy spirits of people who have died. And so, I mean, the answer to those questions, I think, is no. And, some people have read that as the speaker sort of, I don't know, tweaking God a little bit to say like, you want praise, and if I'm dead, I can't praise you. And I think that's a fine way to read it. I've also read others to say that God is fundamentally a God of life. And here we're talking about God, the only people left to praise God are people among the dead. And so drawing that sort of distance between who God claims to be and what God is leaving in the world.
Yeah.
So it's a place there to pause for sure, even though I kind of want to press on
Yeah.
in my own
Yeah.
logical mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you see as the connection between those sellas?
I think pretty similarly to you, I think it's really interesting that right around the midpoint of the psalm, we get this thing about the companions and sort of how this is playing out in the human community as maybe a like microcosm, macrocosm, I don't know, of this person's experience in the world. I am sort of drawn to this, like as though there's like a 2-sentence summary in the middle, like all of my companions have shunned me and I'm disgusting to them. And I reach out to you, like I stretch my hands open in this posture of helplessness. Yeah. And then to have that question at the end feels so pointed. And you're right, it does. Like if there is some kind of music there, it puts the question in your head. And it's going to go into a bunch of questions after that we'll read in just a minute.
Yeah.
But if it's only a series of questions all together, maybe they get kind of jumbled up. I don't know.
Yeah.
But starting with that, do you have a relationship with the dead? Like, can that, what does it mean for me to be having this experience already in my life?
The other thing that you reminded me of that I love just there is that, in the 18 verses, it's the middle of verse 9 where the speaker says, every day I call on you, O Lord, I spread out my hands to you. And so we started the psalm with a calling out, and now at the midpoint of the psalm, we have another calling out and sort of in a posture of supplication. The word call by the way, is a different word than we had before. In verse 1, it was sa'ak.
Yes.
Here it's kara. In verse 13, we're going to get it again as sava. And so there's this sense in which, the speaker's trying out all these different versions of calling out. Like like I have covered the semantic territory of cry out, and I've covered all the times of day. And at these periods within the psalm, and it's still not working.
Oh,
but I like that it draws us back there.
Times of day. Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. All right. You ready to pick up and read this last post-Selah section? Okay. I'm picking up in verse 11 in the NRSV, verse 12 in the Hebrew. Is your faithful care recounted in the grave, your constancy in the place of perdition? Are your wonders made known in the netherworld, your beneficent deeds in the land of oblivion? As for me, I cry out to you, O Eternal One. Each morning my prayer greets you. Why, O Eternal One, do you reject me? Do you hide your face from me? From my youth I have been afflicted and near death. I suffer your terrors wherever I turn. Your fury overwhelms me. Your terrors destroy me. They swirl about me like water all day long. They encircle me on every side. You have put friend and neighbor far from me, and my companions out of my sight. That last line. The translation loses the fact that the last word is darkness.
Yeah.
Like the people who knew me, meyudai, machshoch, like darkness has become darkness, or darkness.
That last line of the psalm is like, so it's poignant, as you're saying, my friends, darkness, and like how to translate that exactly. I feel like the NRSV and in JPS, I don't quite know how you get there. Robert Alter just translates it, my friends, utter darkness.
Yeah.
And I think that is maybe just to let it be what it is in the Hebrew.
Yeah.
I saw a translation somewhere that said, my only friend is darkness. That might be the CEB. Which is not exactly what's in the Hebrew, but it's very
evocative.
Evocative for sure.
And I love too that the word they use there for darkness is like the people who know me.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think gets to this broader question of there's not a lot of petition directly in this psalm.
Yeah.
And so there is this sort of broader question of what is this what does the speaker, the singer want? I mean, they say they cry out to God, but it doesn't, I don't know. Do you understand my question here?
Yeah, when you do much in the way of psalm studies and you get to lament psalms, you learn that lament psalms have a form, and that form includes a direct address to God, and then a petition, which is saying, do this for me, then a complaint, then a turn toward God, right? Like, I know that you are God who will save me, and then a vow of praise. When this thing is over, I will praise you. And so you kind of expect, when you've read enough lament psalms, you're like, this is how it's going to go.
Yeah.
And this one does not give you that at all. It has the address that we've talked about, God of my salvation, and it has it again in verse 9 and again in verse 13. And it has a brief petition, as you're pointing out, but it's really just in the verse 2, incline, let my prayer come before you and incline to me. It's not a specific, like, save me from this thing that's happening. It's just, listen to me. And then the whole rest of the psalm is complaint. And there's no turn, there's no vow of praise.
There's no promise of I'll praise you late. Yeah, vow of praise. Yeah, you just said that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so the way that I kind of am thinking about it is this, the speaker says here, since my youth, I've been desperate.
Yes.
And so this is a thing, like, we have no idea how old they are, but this is a thing that has been going on for some time. And it may be even just their imagination about what would you even ask for has kind of dried up. And so all they've got is, here's my complaint. I need you to hear my complaint.
Yeah.
And so the petition is, let my prayer get to you and incline to me and just hear what I am saying to you, which is, you have harmed me.
Yeah.
And that's what they've got. And that's, I think, maybe all they can imagine.
Yes, so often when I think of lament or think of, something like the book of Job or something like the book of Lamentations, things were good at some point. There was a good time that they remember. And then something happened and all the good things were lost. And here, exactly as you pointed out, this person's been suffering since they were a kid. Like, since they were a Noar, like, since they were young. And so maybe they don't know anything else. And so all they have is these words. That same verse, it's verse 15 in the NRSV and 16 in the Hebrew. It starts with these Hebrew words. They're spelled differently, but they tie together so closely to the ear. Ani, ani. Like, I have been afflicted. Like, I am affliction. I am totally identified with my affliction that has been with me since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And so it feels like that's all they have to offer. I am my affliction, and here it is, God. I offer it to you, and I don't know if you're going to do anything with it. I don't even know what you would do. Bobby, you pointed this out earlier, but now that we have sort of read through the whole psalm, I want to raise it up again because it's feeling important to me that, there are these 3 different verbs that are used for calling out to God. And in the beginning, it tells us that you cried out in the night. And in the middle, it says each day. Yeah, b'chol yom, every day, something like that. And then here we get each morning my prayer greets you. I'm wondering how this fits or doesn't fit or just sort of relates to, like, the speaker is saying, I am so close to death. Like, I am I am right on the brink of Sheol. I am surrounded by the shades, the shadowy replicas of life. And I'm wondering how, like, the awareness of that realm where beings are not praising God, where there's not that sort of close connectedness between God and the dead, how it sort of sits juxtaposed to this speaker who says, I'm so close to that, and yet I am praying morning, noon, and night in all kinds of different ways. I think before our conversation, I had read this person as much more cut off from God already, that there was a sense that praising God is for the realm of the alive, and I'm not quite, I'm sort of in between.
Yeah.
But now I don't know if I want to hold on to that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question and that framing of it. The way that I am reading it is that maybe even just the act of complaint addressed to God is the only lifelike thing that is left for them. They're not really able to muster praise, but they are continuing to engage the relationship. And so they've been cut off from their friends. God is not paying attention to them. God seems to be up there somewhere, but they are still making the connection. And so that's the only thing left. The complaint is the only thing that's left between them and sort of succumbing to this death-like state that they are in completely, which is pretty dim, but it's not, in my mind, the same thing as already being cut off. It is being persistent in the relationship despite the lack of connection coming back in the other direction.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I'm noticing now also another word that changes between those three occasions is in the morning, the thing that's rising up is tefillati, like my prayer.
Yeah.
Ibn Ezra, a medieval Jewish commentator and philosopher who I think was also a physician during the day. I feel like most of the, I feel like all the rabbis at that time were also physicians during the day, pointed out in relationship to this verse that morning is often when people who are sick would have enough energy to pray.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And so then I looked back at the one that refers to the evening, and there, as you said, it's, tza'ak, like this is the outcry. That's crying out. That just feels like a categorically different thing. But it is in all the ways, as you said, like trying to keep that relationship channel open in some kind of way with whatever you can put in that channel as this like tether to the realm of life.
The other kind of reach out to that sort of covenantal relationship is in NRSV verse 11, I guess Hebrew verse 12. Your steadfast love declared in the grave is your faithfulness in Abaddon. And those words, steadfast love and faithfulness, chesed and amunah, are words from Exodus 34, which we've been talking about as sort of the fundamental self-revelation of God in covenant with Israel. And so invoking those words here is pointing back to those earlier promises and those earlier disputes that we've even been reading in this little series. But here there's no God disputing back. So the speaker is kind of doing something like what Moses did.
Yes. Yeah.
But God is just not there.
We don't hear the other side of the phone call. Like, I don't know.
Is true.
Maybe there. But I love that you pointed that right back to Moses, because I was looking then later at verse 15 in the Hebrew, 14 in the NRSV. Why do you hide your face from me? Thinking about Moses' really explicit request, like, no, we need to do this face to face. Like, you can't. I need that kind of relationship. And this is the other end of the extreme.
Yeah. I love that connection. I mean, the one other thing that I've sort of thinking about is one of the commentaries that I looked at was talking about connections between this psalm and the Exodus narrative. And there's a number of them that are worth kind of pursuing a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
But one of them is right here, that dread assaults surround me like a flood all day long. And, we started out with God of my salvation, which is what, like the fundamental sort of act of God's salvation is the freeing of Israel from Egypt. Here we have the person being flooded over, which is what happens, of course, to Pharaoh's army. Like, they don't escape through the floods of salvation. They get flooded in like Pharaoh's army. And so we get language like that about the deeps and escape, not able to escape and being afflicted. And in that same way that we've been talking about, like satiation being reversed, so you're sated with bad things. When you try to read through this thing for references to the Exodus, you also see them like totally reversed, that
Mhm.
this person is
Mhm.
experiencing what the Egyptians experienced, or at least a failure of what the Israelites experienced in the Exodus, yet still referring to God as the God of salvation, as some sort of expectation, but it has not been at all realized for them.
Mm.
This is just a really beautiful psalm.
Yeah.
In all its like difficulty, it's very eloquent in its
Yeah.
articulation.
Yeah. Yeah. Of a really foundational human experience that,
Yeah.
for better or for worse, many of us will feel at some point in our lives. And here it is. All right. Beautiful and difficult psalm. What would you want to leave our listeners with today?
I think where I end up is not so different from where I started out, which is just about the urgent importance of this psalm being included in the corpus of Scripture. Even though in my community, and it sounds like maybe also somewhat in your community, it is functionally absent from Scripture. But this psalm is about disputing with God, who is not, seemingly to the speaker anyway, living up to what it means to be the God of salvation. And so the speaker is very directly calling God on the carpet in some ways, not only saying, you're not listening to me, although they do say that, but also saying, you did this to me. Look what you have done to me. And as you were just saying, I feel like this is so often the experience of human people and people of faith, is that we live through things where God seems utterly absent, and we pray and those prayers seem to have no response. Maybe we feel like God has done things to us which we did not deserve and we didn't ask for, and God doesn't respond to the things we do ask for. And in my experience, so often, the way it has worked practically in my communities of faith is you just are supposed to not talk about those sorts of things. And you would never accuse God of not Godding very well. Yeah. And so this psalm, I think, gives us permission. It gives us warrant. It even gives us a script for saying, a sanctioned script, mind you, that is Holy Scripture in both of our traditions, that says this is an appropriate way that you can speak to God, to say, what the hell are you doing? You know? Yeah. This is not a gentle psalm. This is a just toe-to-toe with a God who's not there, or at least not responsive. And so it is deeply uncomfortable to me. And, I have a couple of times tried to pray prayers sort of along these lines in Christian contexts, and they make people pretty uncomfortable in my experience. But I think that may say more about us than it does about the value of the psalm. And that there's an important part of our faith that is lost when we feel like we can't dispute with God in this kind of way. That God can tell us we're not being very good humans. Yes. But we can't tell God that God is not living up to God's promises. Yeah. And so this lets us do that. It gives us a voice to speak that truth and to dispute with God on our terms, and to speak the truth about our experience of being human without filtering it.
And without being afraid of what, you don't have to, you said filtering out, and I think that's exactly right, without like couching it in all the sort of niceties and making sure that you give, due honor or all those things. Like, those are great, love, due honor, but I don't know, when you're really in there deep, to know that you can just say the thing. Just say the thing.
Yes.
Just say it.
Yeah. And in my community, you would often say something, if you were to say something like this, you would then say, but I know that all things work out in your time, or maybe you are working things out that I just can't see right now. And those are all fine things to say, but that is not the only things that you can say. And this psalm doesn't play with any of that. Yeah. It just says the thing that needs to be said.
Yes. Yes.
What about you, Amy, when you're reading this complicated psalm? Where's it touching the ground for you?
I mean, it's so much of what you said rings true for me too. There's a sort of like theology or philosophy or intellectual way of thinking about God and the world, where in Hebrew we would say it's the theology of gam ze latova, like this too is for the good. Everything is for the good. I don't know God's ways. God knows better than I do. I can say like I don't like this thing, but gam ze latova. This is not a gam ze latova psalm, you know. It is more of like a post-Holocaust psalm or a chronic illness that has no treatment. And like, it is actually, you are in pain and are going to be in pain.
Yes.
And there's no theological or philosophical or intellectual way of making that jive with our sense of the God that we believe to be in the world. I think prayer lets us go there in a way that theology and philosophy might struggle to encounter.
Yes.
And I think even more for me, like song will help me go there.
Yes.
Even once we start putting words on it, then I start getting uncomfortable because I start going into my head and wondering how things fit together. But I think often that what counts as real prayer for me at the end of the day is in these really difficult situations, like, can I say a true thing? What is one true thing that I can say about whatever is happening? And this psalm says some true things. I have one other thought that also came from listening to these teachings of Rabbi Shai Held that has felt important to me as we've been reading. You know, we have this question of like, is God on the other end of the phone? Like we don't know. Like we wouldn't have access to that anyway. But we can wonder about, you know, when you have experiences where someone is gone from your life and you're not ready for them to be gone. Maybe they died, maybe a relationship ended, and you find yourself having conversations with them.
Yes.
And they can be very uncomfortable conversations. And they are also a way to sort of make that person manifest in a way that feels really real, and sometimes makes you angry and sometimes makes you happy and sometimes makes you miss them more. But staying in conversation in the way that this psalm does,
yes,
even though we don't hear God's response and we don't get any sense from the speaker that God has shown up and helped before, it does feel like a way to, like a very powerful act to like manifest God precisely by talking to God. I don't know. I wonder about that as a tool in these moments and experiences in the world.
I love that, Amy. That's so lovely. And, you know, the text that we're going to read next week is a text that's a little bit about persistence and faith, that like staying engaged even when things don't seem to be going the way that you are hoping that they will go. We're going to shift over into the New Testament in Matthew 15, 21 to 28, which is a story of, she's called a Syrophoenician woman in Mark, but Matthew calls her a Canaanite woman, which is a thing that we'll want to talk about. I was wondering if you would be willing, after this complicated psalm that we have read and trying to put words around it, if you would be willing to sing us out with your Hebrew chant and just let that tie us up.
Yeah, tie it all together.
Move us beyond the words.